Right now, at this exact moment, somewhere over the Persian Gulf, an American MQ-9 Reaper drone worth $32 million has been shot down by Iranian air defense systems. U.S. Central Command confirms the aircraft was operating in international airspace, conducting routine surveillance, when Iranian surface-to-air missiles locked on and fired. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims the drone violated Iranian territorial waters and posed an immediate threat to national security. One of these statements is a lie, and the next 72 hours will determine whether this incident triggers the military confrontation both sides have spent months trying to avoid. Let me walk you through exactly what happened, because the timeline reveals a pattern that should terrify anyone paying attention. At 05:45 hours local time this morning, February 14, 2026, the MQ-9 Reaper designated Razor 3-1 departed from Al Dhafar Air Base in the United Arab Emirates on what U.S. Central Command described as a routine intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance mission over the Strait of Hormuz. The drone's flight path, tracked by multiple commercial aviation monitoring systems, kept it approximately 23 nautical miles off the Iranian coast, well within the internationally recognized boundary of international airspace. At 0712 hours, Iranian military radar systems based at Bandar Abbas Naval Base achieved lock on the aircraft. 2 minutes later, at 0714 hours, Iranian forces launched what initial assessments identify as a Russian-made 9M96E2 surface-to-air missile from an S-400 Triumph air defense battery positioned along the Hormuzgan province coastline. The missile covered the distance in approximately 40 seconds, detonating within lethal proximity of the Reaper at an altitude of 25,000 feet. The drone's transponder signal disappeared from tracking systems at 0715 hours. Debris from the aircraft is currently being recovered from international waters by the USS Paul Hamilton, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer that was operating approximately 40 nautical miles southwest of the intercept point. Within 90 minutes of the shootdown, Iran's Tasnim news agency, which has direct links to the Revolutionary Guard, published a statement claiming the drone had penetrated Iranian airspace and ignored multiple warnings to alter course. U.S. Central Command issued a counter-statement at 0900 hours declaring categorically that Razor 3-1 never violated Iranian territorial boundaries and that Iranian claims represent deliberate misinformation designed to justify an illegal act of aggression against American military assets operating in international space. To understand why this shootdown represents a threshold-crossing escalation, you need to understand exactly what an MQ-9 Reaper is and what losing one means strategically. The MQ-9 Reaper is not a small hobby quadcopter. This is a medium-altitude, long-endurance, unmanned aerial vehicle with a wingspan of 66 feet, a maximum takeoff weight of 10,850 pounds, and the capability to remain airborne for over 27 hours without refueling. The Reaper cruises at altitudes up to 50,000 feet and carries a sophisticated sensor package including the N/DS-1 multispectral targeting system, which provides full motion video, infrared imaging, laser designation, and laser illumination capabilities. This particular aircraft was almost certainly equipped with signals intelligence collection systems capable of monitoring Iranian military communications, radar emissions, and electronic warfare activities across a 200-mile radius. The strategic value of continuous Reaper coverage over the Persian Gulf cannot be overstated. These platforms provide U.S. Central Command with real-time intelligence on Iranian naval movements, particularly the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy's fleet of fast attack craft and mini-submarines that pose asymmetric threats to commercial shipping and U.S. naval vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. The aircraft also monitor missile launch sites, track the movement of mobile air defense systems, and provide early warning of potential attacks against American forces stationed at bases throughout the region. Losing this surveillance capability, even temporarily until a replacement drone deploys, creates a significant intelligence gap that Iran can exploit. The shootdown itself demonstrates Iranian air defense capabilities that many Western analysts have underestimated. The S-400 Triumph system represents Russia's most advanced exportable air defense platform, featuring the 9M96E2 missile with a maximum engagement range of 120 kilometers and the ability to simultaneously track up to 80 targets while engaging 36 of them. The system employs multiple radar bands, including X-band and S-band frequencies, that make electronic jamming extremely difficult. Each S-400 battery includes command posts, radar systems, and up to 12 transporter erector launchers carrying 4 missiles each, providing deep magazine depth that can sustain engagements against multiple waves of aircraft or missiles. The 9M96E2 missile itself uses an active radar, homing guidance system in terminal phase, meaning it does not require continuous radar illumination from ground stations, making it resistant to anti-radiation missiles that target radar emitters. Iran acquired its first S-400 batteries through covert channels in late 2024, and this appears to be the first confirmed operational use of the system against an American military target. The successful intercept proves that Iranian air defense networks can detect, track, and engage high-altitude surveillance platforms operating at the edge of their coverage envelope. This capability fundamentally changes the risk calculus for American reconnaissance missions and demonstrates that Iran possesses the technical means to deny U.S. forces unfettered access to airspace near Iranian territory. Here's why this matters strategically and why military planners across the Pentagon are treating this incident as a potential inflection point. From the American perspective, allowing Iran to shoot down reconnaissance aircraft with impunity sets a precedent that cannot stand. If Iranian air defense systems can target American drones operating in international airspace without consequence, Iran effectively extends its defensive perimeter beyond internationally recognized boundaries and establishes de facto control over airspace that belongs to no nation. This precedent threatens freedom of navigation principles that underpin the entire post-World War II international order. Moreover, the REAPER shootdown occurs against the backdrop of escalating tensions following recent attacks on commercial shipping, Iranian proxy strikes against American bases in Iraq and Syria, and the ongoing nuclear negotiations that collapsed last month in Vienna. From Iran's perspective, however, the calculus looks entirely different, and understanding Iranian strategic logic is essential to predicting how this crisis evolves. Tehran views American surveillance flights along its coastline as preparation for military strikes against nuclear facilities, missile sites, and command centers. The continuous presence of American reconnaissance assets creates intelligence preparation of the battlefield that would enable precision strikes with minimal warning time. By demonstrating the capability and willingness to shoot down surveillance platforms, Iran signals that it will not passively accept American intelligence collection activities that could facilitate future attacks. The Revolutionary Guard also faces significant domestic political pressure to demonstrate strength following recent economic hardships caused by international sanctions and internal protests challenging the regime's legitimacy. According to Dr. Afshin Ostavar, Associate Professor of National Security Affairs at the Naval Postgraduate School and author of Vanguard of the Imam, Religion, Politics, and Iran's Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC leadership views provocative actions against American forces as essential to maintaining hardline credentials within Iran's complex internal power dynamics. In an analysis published just last week, Ostavar explained that the Revolutionary Guard cannot afford to appear weak or accommodating toward the United States without risking loss of influence to more moderate factions within the Iranian government who favor diplomatic engagement. The drone shootdown serves multiple strategic purposes simultaneously, demonstrating military capability to external adversaries while signaling domestic audiences that the Guard remains committed to resisting American pressure. Historical precedent provides limited guidance because this specific scenario, an Iranian shootdown of an American military aircraft in international airspace during peacetime, lacks direct analog in recent decades. The closest comparison is the June 2019 incident when Iran shot down a U.S. Navy RQ for a Global Hawk surveillance drone over the Strait of Hormuz. Then, as now, contradictory claims emerged about whether the aircraft violated Iranian airspace. President Trump famously authorized and then canceled retaliatory strikes against Iranian targets at the last minute, opting instead for cyber operations and additional economic sanctions. That restraint however, occurred in a fundamentally different strategic context. In June 2019, the Global Hawk shootdown represented an isolated incident without the accumulated pattern of escalatory actions that define the current environment. Today, the Reaper loss follows months of increasing tensions, multiple attacks on shipping, strikes against American facilities, and the recent collapse of diplomatic engagement efforts. There are three scenarios for how this develops, and understanding the probability and logic of each is essential. Scenario 1 is diplomatic de-escalation through back channels and calculated restraint. Probability assessment, 30 to 35%. For this pathway to succeed, both Washington and Tehran would need to employ indirect communication channels, likely through Omani or Swiss intermediaries, to establish mutual understanding about acceptable response parameters. The United States would issue strong condemnations and potentially impose targeted sanctions against specific IRGC commanders responsible for the shoot-down order, but would refrain from military retaliation. Iran would avoid further provocations while privately signaling through intermediaries that the shoot-down represented a defensive response to perceived American aggression rather than the opening move in a broader campaign. Both sides would claim victory to their domestic audiences while actually exercising restraint, with the United States emphasizing that no American lives were lost and that surveillance missions will continue, while Iran portrays the incident as successful defense of sovereign airspace. The obstacles to this scenario are significant. Domestic political pressure on President Trump to demonstrate strength following the loss of a $32 million aircraft operating legally in international space will be intense. Congressional Republicans will demand retaliation, arguing that failure to respond invites further Iranian aggression. Trump's own foreign policy advisors, particularly those advocating maximum pressure approaches toward Iran, will counsel that restraint signals weakness that Iran will exploit. On the Iranian side, hardliners within the Revolutionary Guard may interpret American restraint as vindication of aggressive tactics, potentially encouraging additional provocations. Scenario 2 is limited military retaliation calibrated to avoid wider war. Probability assessment, 45 to 50%. This represents the most likely trajectory based on current dynamics. Under this scenario, the United States conducts precision strikes against the specific S-400 battery that conducted the shoot-down, potentially combined with strikes against nearby coastal radar installations that provided targeting data. These strikes would likely employ Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from destroyers or submarines operating in the Arabian Sea, avoiding risk to manned aircraft and minimizing Iranian casualties by targeting equipment rather than personnel concentrations. The operation would occur at night, with advance notification through back channels to Russian advisors operating near Iranian air defense sites to prevent Russian casualties that could trigger Moscow's involvement. Iran would conduct symbolic retaliation, potentially launching missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq or conducting new attacks on commercial shipping, but would calibrate these responses to demonstrate resistance without causing mass American casualties that would make escalation inevitable. This scenario's success depends on both sides maintaining strict control over escalation dynamics and avoiding the accidents or miscalculations that transform limited exchanges into open warfare. The risks are substantial. Any American strike carries possibility of unintended casualties, equipment malfunctions that cause missiles to strike unintended targets, or Iranian defensive responses that inflict American deaths. Each of these variables could transform calibrated retaliation into escalation spiral neither side intended. Intelligence assessments from the Institute for the Study of War suggest that Iranian military doctrine emphasizes rapid escalation to demonstrate resolve rather than accepting limited strikes passively, which increases the probability that measured American retaliation triggers Iranian counter-retaliation beyond original parameters. Scenario 3 is catastrophic escalation triggered by miscalculation or deliberate choice. Probability assessment, 15 to 20%. Under this nightmare trajectory, American military strikes against Iranian targets are more extensive than Scenario 2, targeting not just the specific air defense battery, but multiple sites across Iranian coastal defenses. Iran interprets these strikes as preparation for regime change operations and responds with massive missile barrages against American bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, potentially causing significant American casualties. President Trump faces overwhelming domestic pressure for devastating retaliation. Within 72 hours, American B-2 stealth bombers strike Iranian nuclear facilities, missile production centers, and Revolutionary Guard command notes. Iran activates Hezbollah against Israel, closes the Strait of Hormuz to all commercial traffic, and conducts ballistic missile strikes against Saudi oil infrastructure. Oil prices spike above $120 per barrel. Regional war engulfs the Middle East with direct American-Iranian combat, Israeli strikes against Iranian assets throughout the region, and potential Russian intervention to protect its interests in Syria and its relationship with Tehran. This scenario remains the least probable, but carries such catastrophic consequences that it cannot be dismissed. Watch for 5 critical indicators in the next 24 to 48 hours that will reveal which scenario is materializing. First, military asset movements. If additional American carrier strike groups receive deployment orders toward the Persian Gulf region, offensive posture increases dramatically and suggests scenario 2 or 3 preparation. Second, diplomatic communications. If Oman or Switzerland announce facilitation of indirect American-Iranian dialogue within the next 48 hours, scenario 1 remains viable. Third, Iranian domestic messaging. If Supreme Leader Khamenei makes a public address, his language will definitively reveal whether Iran seeks de-escalation or views confrontation as strategically necessary. Fourth, oil market reactions. If crude prices surge above $95 per barrel and remain elevated for more than 24 hours, markets are pricing in conflict probability exceeding 50%. Fifth, Russian positioning. If Moscow issues statements calling for restraint from both sides, while simultaneously repositioning forces or evacuating advisors from Iranian facilities, Russian intelligence likely indicates imminent American strikes. The Reaper drone is gone. $32 million of American surveillance technology is scattered across the Persian Gulf floor. What happens next depends on decisions being made right now in the White House Situation Room, at U.S. Central Command Headquarters in Tampa, and in Tehran's Supreme National Security Council offices. I'm monitoring this situation minute by minute, tracking military movements through ship tracking networks, analyzing satellite imagery of Iranian and American force dispositions, and maintaining contact with sources who understand the diplomatic and military dynamics at play. When the next development breaks, when Trump announces his response decision, when Iran conducts its next move, you will understand what it means and why it matters here on this channel before mainstream media provides superficial coverage. Subscribe to this channel immediately and activate all notifications. This is not entertainment. This is not speculation. This is real-time analysis of a crisis that could determine whether the United States and Iran stumble into a war that neither government wants, but that both may find impossible to avoid. Drop a comment right now answering 3 questions. First, do you think Trump will authorize military strikes or exercise restraint? Second, is Iran's claim that the drone violated its airspace credible or deliberate misinformation? Third, does this incident make regional war more likely, or will both sides find a way to de-escalate? I read every single comment, and your thoughtful analysis matters deeply. The next 72 hours will determine absolutely everything. Thank you for watching. The clock is ticking, and the margin for miscalculation is razor thin.